like I'm eating a fondue pot with a spoon. Like, that's literally what it feels like. I'm tasting white wine, I'm tasting cheese.
You just like poured pasta in a fondue pot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm here for it.
Little tiny dumplings, I think, is more the...
There's a lot of mac and cheese that goes down to my house, but none of it is this fancy and wonderful. We're here to define shaping 101. What is the definition of shaping? And the way that I would say that is shaping is Loupe's practice of specifying something, scoping a piece of work, not too tightly and not too loosely, just the right amount of detail, so that a sprint team can go and execute that chunk in a 6-week sprint. We're kind of in the abstract part of it, but when we're talking about shaping, we're really talking about scoping. Like, what we want people to understand when we say shaping is we're talking about how we define a scope, like how we define a scope of work, how we define a specification. Like, engineers and everybody know, people know what scoping and specification is. This is really our term for how we do that in a flexible way. I think shape is kind of was chosen because it's kind of like pushing it, like roughly shaping it. Mm-hmm. Not like specifying it to me means like something very specific and like very detailed and very like locked in. Shaping is kind of like roughly like this.
It's like when you're doing clay sculptures, you shape it out first.
Yeah.
You get that rough shape, you get the head shape, and then you start going into the refinements of all little pieces.
Yeah, totally. So it needs to be a new word because specification doesn't mean that thing. When you talk about specification, you're really locked into that thing. You're talking about it absolutely must be this way. Everything is detailed in here or it doesn't exist. Like, shaping really acknowledges or built into that process. It builds in, like, when you get into it and you try to build it, you're going to have to figure a lot of that out. So we leave it rough enough so that the people that are really building it can go and make it really look that way, given all of the stuff that they're going to find when they try to build it.
Bring Adam out of the marble.
Right. I could make the fat marker sketch of David. I couldn't do that.
Yeah, he's holding a sling. He's he's naked.
Standing, tall, pedestal, like roughly like that.
Yeah.
As opposed to, here's 100 pages of Word documents about what the statue should look like. What is shall.
It's curly, wavy hair.
Man, it's too painful to think back. Too many painful memories of. How do you think it benefits clients?
I think it takes some of the pressure off as you're shaping.
Yeah, totally.
From the client, that it's like, I have to get all of this in there because like this is my one
Right.
shot to get this budget,
And we're
like,
gonna put our signature on it.
Yeah,
right?
it's like, all right, let's do the blood.
Signing in blood.
Signing in blood. Yeah. So
You definitely want this, right?
You definitely want this, right?
Using the term shaping it also, I think, is more realistic about like what clients are asking for. Like, often they're not able to specify it to that level of detail until they're involved in the building process. They actually see it. Like, there's a lot about shaping that benefits where it's like, we mean roughly something like this, and as that comes into focus, now we can refine it, right? But if you were trying to go into it and be like, let's try to get infinite detail before we start building, it's really not realistic. Like, and actually, so I think it really helps the client relationships because it's like, yeah, we agree it's roughly like this. When we get into it, like, we're going to be doing those refinements to like really create it just like you like, because it's like almost a running joke. It's like, I built them exactly what they asked for and they don't want it, right? Like, it's not what we want. It's like, how many times have you heard service organizations or like agencies talk about that? It's because it's your dumbest moment before you start building the work, right? So it's like building looseness into that process, like, really helps the client like develop their idea of what it is. It helps them sort of like start into the general thing, but then actually have something finished and show progress in a really short amount of time. That's how it becomes clear, through the process of building it, not before you ever started, right? Like, that's why like shaping is just like roughly like this, like, okay, go now, start building again. I think that's something that clients really appreciate, and we really appreciate, because it puts us on the same side of the table of like, how do we want to refine this? Not, let's try to build something we agreed to 6 months ago and is wrong.
Yeah, there's something powerful of bending a few nails, like having that history of like building it up as you go, like that gives you another level of vision of what the right solution looks like.
Yeah.
It also allows you to, like, given the realignments or the vectors that we've gone through as they're going through the sprints, that allows you to like, okay, given another 6 weeks, we can build it this way, but to finish in this 6 weeks, to have this deployed, the operators need it. Like, we can have that history and be able to morph that solution to fit within those bounds, given that it's not already a large recipe checklist that you have to do.
Yeah. I was just cheating and looking at the Ryan Singer shape up notes, and he had this amazing thing that was like levels. It was like too abstract, too concrete, like just right. There's this like middle ground where it can't be too loose, but it also can't be too specific. It needs to be just the right level of flexibility to hand that work to a team of people to actually go build it. And that's what I think is really cool about shaping is this, there's also this term like a fat marker sketch where it's rough and you get enough of the general idea. So it's not too unbounded, but it's also really something that you could hand to somebody and say, go build something that's just like this.
Yeah, I just finished up a video series from Ryan Singer that like he had a good perspective on this on if you fat marker sketches indicate like there's a thought process or this is an example in which like if you go through something like Figma or some like more refined document
Or a 50-page
flow,
Word doc. Yeah.
more indicates as law like this has to be the solution versus like, these are guidelines on what the solution can be.
Yeah.
Was a powerful like too much too little.
Right. So there's this like nice middle ground we're looking for in between like really over specifying it, like first of all because it takes a lot of time and usually because it's like way constrained. Like when you get in and actually try to build it, it turns out there's all these little quirks or all these things where that initial idea is too detailed and doesn't fit, and so you're stuck with that. It's like, well, I got to build exactly what was specified because that was the agreement. Like that's not a good place to be. And then at the same time it's like you don't want it to be so unbounded that it's just like too loose, so that somebody you hand it to a dev team and they come back and you're like, that's not at all what we were going for. So like it's a tricky balance to strike, but it's intentionally kind of ambiguous, which I think for engineering requirements is the kind of puzzle or what people have like the most challenge thinking through is like, well, we're going to specify it down exactly to the right detail because that's what a specification is. And it's like, sure, if you know what specification exactly you're trying to hit, that can work fine. But when you're building new things, it's like you get into it and you're like, oh, there's all these quirks and details we need to contend with. And so we need to give the teams that are building it for real the flexibility to like find their way through that. So that's what I like about shaping is it gives a lot of autonomy to the developers to be able to build the right thing and not get tripped up on like, usually some salesperson put this on page 50 of the spec and 5 bullet levels deep, and that's just really a difficult way to build something.
Yeah, and a powerful tool with that is like the boundaries of like being able to say no. It's like we're not actually working on these. It's okay if there's error conditions here and there's manual processes that we can put into place to get us over these, but it's like what are the showstoppers of the immediate need currently, and like let's attack the needs, not attack the wants quite yet until they become needs. And that goes back into the practice of no backlogs. Like if you need it, it will show its face. You don't need to write it down.
Right. And shaping really prevents it from taking some minor thing and they're like, go build me this feature, and it's like, yes, but along the way I decided I needed to redo this and redo this and redo this. Like shaping it as a way of like really cordoning it off and being like, no, only in this area. These other places are out of bounds, and like really keeping the project focused on exactly the feature that wants to get built, as opposed to like all these things that could sort of really run out of control. Like that's where the art of like setting the target and also setting the boundaries, especially when you're dealing with a short amount of time, like only 6 weeks, like there's only so much you can do, and that's a good thing because it can't spiral, right? Like it's really
and you've like inverted the unlike scoping, shaping, you're inverting the thought process. We're now designing that feature or that ability of the system into that 6 weeks. Like this is what the budget is, this is when it's pencils down. Like we're designing to like best fit the need to fit into there, instead of like these are everything that it needs to do. Without like high priority, low priority, and like all of it needs to be done at some point. Okay, but like what's the immediate need, and like let's attack that first.
Another thing I love about the shaping process, besides here's roughly what we're going for, is also all of the boundaries that it puts on, which seems like it could be limiting, but really it's a safety feature, right? Where it's like it's really a way of like putting a box around something and being like only here, right? Because so many projects, you get into it and you're like, they start cartwheeling out of control, or you start feeling like, well, as long as I'm doing this, let me redo this. It's like the boundaries about, and again, it helps the client, it helps the dev teams to be like, no, like we're not dealing with that part right now. And the ability to say no, right? with the client, with the dev, to be like, we're not working on that part right now. Like maybe for another sprint, right? Like the future phases is my favorite part, because it's like, what that means is we're not doing this right now. Like we're only doing this. And like that clarity is something that really helps people know what to do when they're coming in, keep all their attention and focus on the right parts. Like that's a part of the shaping process just as much. What we're not doing as much as roughly what we're building is this. Like also don't worry about these other elements. Like all eyes on this, all attention on this aspect has a way of like really producing good results, because people know what they're supposed to be focused on.
So what happens when we shape and there's not enough meat on the bone?
Undershaped?
Undershaped.
Do we say undershaped?
Undershaped?
What happens
not
to
enough
an
detail?
undershaped? An undershape.
I mean, we find that a lot of rabbit holes are found.
Rabbit holes? Okay.
Rabbit holes are a big one.
Time bombs?
Time bombs. Yeah. I mean, like it hasn't been thought out enough. And that would be on the shaper or the shaping team. Also, you lose vision of what that success looks like. There's like a misinterpretation of like all the work that has been done with the client and how it's been interpolated. I mean, there's a bit of a game of telephone that happens when you are. There's a bit of game of telephone when you're like talking with the client, working with the client, framing the issues, like figuring out the vision of the system. And if that document that's handed to the execution team isn't thought out enough or shaped enough, or there's not enough meat there, then you find rabbit holes. Like they lose the vision of what that success looks like. Yeah. And there's only so much realignment of success when working with the client. It's 6 weeks. Like it's not that long.
You don't have time to solve it 4 times.
You can't make a U-turn.
Maybe twice. Yeah, right.
We don't want to make a U-turn, but we do want to make alignments and stay with the client and like make sure we're on the right trajectory.
Yeah.
Another benefit to the client is like the turnaround time. Yeah. Like instead of making a 50-page document, right, that like is very hard coded and we're signing in blood, it's like, here, this is good enough, let's get to work, let's start producing.
Yeah, totally.
Being able to alleviate some of that stress that like this is chiseled in stone, this is signed in blood. Yeah. Like that, relieving some of the pressure. Spring. Yeah. Changing weather again. That allows us to get to work right away. Hit some of those ridiculous milestones because we can get started quicker and pivot as they come up.
Yeah, totally.
Not get stuck in a he said, she said battle.
Mm-hmm. Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers. Thanks for having me.
To Flexible Scopes.